Operation Fast and Furious in the House. The California Republican chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and he is with me now. Congressman Issa, thank you very much for being here, Mr. Chairman, I should say. And let me ask you that question. The story of Lanny Brewer, he's pretty high up in the Department of Justice and was at the time of this whole thing. He's the one who testified before Congress on this. And what is his position on this letter? Are his fingerprints on it? My information was he testified he didn't remember seeing it.
Well, Lanny Brewer is the responsible individual when you flow up the chain of command for criminal investigations and prosecutions. So after 3 years on the job, he's the one responsible for successes or failures and policies. And ultimately, he, of course, reports directly to Eric Holder, as did Grindler, who was the number 2 and now is the chief of staff. As earlier, while I was listening, clearly we're back to starting over again in many ways. We're going back to interviewing. We'll have former U.S. Attorney Burke in there next week to follow up a lot of new questions. Grindler and others will be before our investigators. But this is one of those challenges where we're now almost a year into this investigation. What we discover is we were misled. The word lie is always a tough one. Ron Weiss may have told us what he thought was the truth, but people clearly told him things that were not true, and he passed them on in letters and in testimony. So we're going back through. We'll be talking to all the individuals just at a time in which, under the same leadership, under U.S. Justice, we now have this expanding scandal of the DEA participating in money laundering in order to find out where the money goes in violation of agreements with Mexico, in violations of U.S. law. Clearly, this is now more about, can the justice be trusted to conduct investigations according to the law, or do they believe that the end justifies the means? And these means, both at DEA, as reported in the New York Times, and Fast and Furious, are not means the American people want to see. And that's what we have to get to the bottom of. After 3 years, there should be real change in this justice, and there doesn't seem to be.
Just to clarify, one of Holder's key deputies is Lanny Brewer. He heads up the criminal division at DOJ, and he told the Senate Judiciary Committee on November 1st that, quote, "I cannot say for sure whether I saw a draft of that letter." And then he went on to say in written testimony to Senator Grassley that he had no recollection of seeing that letter before it was sent. And now these documents that came out on Friday reportedly include evidence that he forwarded versions of that very letter from his official email to his personal Gmail account on 3 occasions, once before it was sent and twice after. There is a question about who knew what and when, and whether the DOJ, rather than just taking responsibility for this program, Congressman, did its best to obfuscate the investigation.
Megan, there's no question that this was a cover-up from day one. This was an attempt to sort of push Grassley aside because he was in the minority. Then when we weighed in, they began to participate, but they participated with knowingly false information. I think when you look at Lanny Brewer as one of the keys here, along with Attorney General Holder, what you see is somebody who played fast and loose with actually doing their job, supervising, knowing what was going on, and yet they obviously had a lot to do with making sure that Wide Receiver was revived in this Fast and Furious operation. Remember, Wide Receiver was a program under President Bush that was found to be a failure and shut down. So if anything, this should have been a lesson learned that it didn't work when it was done comparatively well, but didn't work under President Bush. And obviously, starting this again was a huge mistake on Lanny Brewer's watch.
Need to ask you this quickly, but so far, all those involved in this, the ones we know were involved in this, have all been reassigned, moved to another government-paid position, but no firings. Should somebody have been or be fired in the wake of this?
People should be held accountable. In the case of lying to Congress or causing false information to go to Congress, that's a criminal violation. And as we explore this, oddly enough, we may be referring to justice for criminal prosecution, people who knowingly allowed false information to come to Congress. It's not just going before us and raising your right hand, it's causing information to come to Congress which is deceptive or flat untrue. And clearly, these emails, this document dump, shows that happened with multiple individuals. And that's where our investigation will continue as it expands to look at other wrongdoing. But Megan, the one thing I hope all your listeners and viewers understand is we've got to bring about change so this doesn't happen again.
Right.
And so far, we're a long way from getting buy-in that this should never happen again in our country, and it is perhaps continuing even today.
Eric Holder says he agrees with you on that point. Chairman Issa, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Megan.
Well, big cuts coming to a post office